Now, would like to, have a discussion in the studio and look at the political point. And I'll start by, first of all, introducing the panel that we have. And to my extreme left, we have Honorable T.J. Kajwang, who is the current Member of Parliament in Ruaraka, also defending your seat. And I guess congratulations are in order for being the party nominee, ODM party.
Thank you.
Congratulations. We also have Honorable Irungo Kangata, who currently is a Member of Parliament for Keharo, but now you have the nomination for Senator.
Yes, indeed.
Congratulations are in order as well.
Thank you.
All right. And shortly, we're also going to be joined by a political analyst, that's Suba Churchill, who's going to be joining us. Now, gentlemen, let's start first of all with the just concluded party primaries. And I'm guessing, but let me not second guess, that you're going to say they were free and fair because you're the winners. But let me start with you, Honorable T.J. Kajwang, on how you feel the primaries were conducted.
Well, when I was last here, I remember we were with the now Senator
nominee.
Congratulations.
Thank you, my brother. Congratulations.
And I told him that I will come here a week after, and he will have lessons to learn from ODM.
Yes,
then
that's it. And just to put it into context, that's the time he was saying that Jubilee nominations are going to be extremely organized, free and fair, only for them to be cancelled. But carry on.
Well, I must say that, look, bearing all the conditions that have faced all these political parties, I must say that these parties have tried. I was here last time and I said that nominations have been very, very difficult, have been very, very challenging. Particularly, ODM has had it rough. Well, we have had it rough over the years because the government has decided to take away the machinery of security, machinery of logistics, from people who are also taxpayers who need to benefit from this, and expecting that a crowd of thousands and thousands of people will be organized to do anything is just expecting out of nature. I would have expected that the security machinery would have shown up, even if they are not called, even if they have intelligence that 3 or 4 people are gathering somewhere to distribute money. It is their mandate to do it. And so it has been very, very difficult for ODM to try using the skills of men and black men and you know, that kind of thing.
Men in black.
Yes, men in black. Yeah. Men in black, to try to keep security. Yes, there are so many areas in which the political parties would have done well, better, particularly in issues of logistics, how materials arrive at stations, how those things are done, to reduce on ballot stuffing, because this means that there must have been some leakage of ballot stuffing and so on. So the respective boards would have done better. But I also must think that the parties have done well in terms of dispute resolutions. At least now there is some due process of law taking place internally. And members are able to file their complaints, get supporters to come and support those cases. In cases which we have seen absolute malpractices, we have repeated them. In other cases, we have upheld them. So I think that this goes across the board. I am told that Jubilee, which has also not had it
easy.
It's not been easy. They have fought it tooth and nail. Even when they have had all those security apparatus, every police in town has had to troop to a Jubilee polling stations and so on. But I have seen also they have tried to do a lot of internal dispute resolution. This is good. Let me tell you, my thinking is that all these issues that we are seeing is still a manifestation on how we are grappling with the new constitution, to understand the constitutional philosophy of what multipartyism means. You know, where does a party fit in terms of political rights under Article 38? And so you see people trying to enjoy their political rights under parties. Some also want to go independent. But the question is, so what do you profess if you are an independent? What do you profess if you are a party member? These are the things that we are going to understand, and it will be with us for some 20 or so years so that we really understand where we are in terms of multi-party politics in this country.
Irungu Kangata, your comments on the just concluded nominations.
Well, taking into account how competitive these nominations were, I think the major parties have conducted themselves in a fairly good manner. I say that based on various parameters. Number one, you take into account whether we had transparent ballot boxes distributed to each and every polling center. In regard to Jubilee, that happened. You also take into account whether a voter was identified properly and every voter was given a chance to vote, and also whether agents were allowed to come and observe the elections. To that extent, to me, I think that happened in Jubilee. On the part of ODM, I can't really comment except probably make comments based on what I've seen in the newspapers. To the extent I've seen people who are quite close with the party honchos losing their nominations. Again, that's quite
and do you
positive.
think that's a good thing for Kenya, given that we have people who are seen as allies to the party leaders, even losing in the nominations?
Yes, it's quite positive. Eh? Of course, if you are close to the president and you win in a fair manner, you should be given that ticket. We should not be celebrating a big name failing just because that person is big, no. But the point is, it does show that every person appears to have an equal chance in nomination, notwithstanding you don't have a huge or a big name. So I say that because, for instance, I saw that happening in Luo Nyanza, where we saw the brother to Raila Odinga, my dear friend, Dr. Oburu, losing, and when he made an attempt to obtain that certificate through dubious means, it was cancelled. We saw Midiwa, who is said to be a relative to the party leader of ODM. To me, again, if at all what we saw is the correct position, then it shows that party is also appearing to be maturing. On the part of Jubilee, we saw very huge names also falling by the wayside, and the party appears also to give that legitimacy to the eventual winner of that party nominations. Of course, we have seen some people trying to spun a theory. For instance, in our party, that there were some people who were pulling some string to knock out some huge names. I can tell you that is not true. In our party, the issue was purely merit. Do you have the people's support? If you don't have the people's support, go home. Going forward, I would urge the parties to do the following. Number one, distribution of ballot boxes should be done, I think, one day before the elections. You ensure every polling center has a ballot box. It has every materials one day before the nomination. Because I say that because there was a lot of delays in distribution of electoral materials. Number two, we must also give a chance to the security officers to man each and every polling center. In Jubilee areas, we saw that was quite clear. He is saying the government appears to have withdrawn the security machinery in regard to the ODM nominations. I am not so certain. If at all that happened, I think that's very unfortunate. You deserve to have security in your nominations. Of course, when I looked at the TV, I tend to disagree with my friend. I saw police manning the nominations of Busia and bringing about some order in ODM nominations. I saw also police manning various other nominations in ODM.
Kangata, which country are you living in? If you're living in Kenya, you will see how police has been selective in attending.
Allow me to, first of all, introduce the two gentlemen there, then I'll come to that point. And joining us now, we have Suba Churchill, who's a political analyst, and also Bernard Wakoli, who's also a political analyst. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. And maybe I'll pose the same question to you that I did to this gentleman, and that is to do with the party nominations just concluded. Let me start with you, Suba Churchill, on your thoughts on how they went. And maybe to move the conversation forward, how democratic they were, because they will augur or weigh heavily on August the 8th. If they were not democratic, then really even going to the polls on August 8th is put into, on a negative side of the weighing scale.
I want to say that nominations, by and large, were democratic, because democracy is about participation of the people. We have never witnessed such a huge number, and I think a number of parties, including ODM and Jubilee, were caught flat-footed by the sheer number of people who wanted to vote for their preferred candidates. They were undemocratic and unfair to the extent that the parties have been caught flat-footed, were not prepared. His Excellency the President said they were underprepared. I don't think that is the word. They were ill-prepared. That is the correct word. Because they prepared insufficient number of ballot papers. They underestimated the number that will turn out. Yet, in primaries, you'd expect that numbers would be larger because every candidate who wants to win the ticket will be mobilizing their constituencies and supporters. I think to the extent that parties have also been able to accept defeat of certain luminaries in their rank and file is a beautiful thing, and it is the first time I think Kenyans are putting into practice Article 1 of the Constitution, that the sovereign power rests with the people, and that it does not matter what you do in between one election and the other. When the hour of reckoning comes, as it did for a number of politicians, whether you are related to who, whether you owe this rank, I think the people spoke firmly, and I think there is an extent to which Kenyans are way ahead of the political leadership, looking at the kind of nominations, and for the first time we have a Mr. Mondi in Kiambu being popularly elected, and I think that's something you need to point out, because one of the objects of devolution was to promote national unity by recognizing diversity. If you go to Vihiga, again we have somebody from Central, deep right inside Central, being nominated to contest for an MCA position. And I think these are the kind of things that we want to see. We want to also thank particularly Jubilee, I think, for the firm decision they took in Turbo constituency, where local contestants were saying, Kevin Okara is not an indigenous, he's an outsider, quote unquote. And the returning officer was heckled time and again as he tried to make the announcement that the winner of the primaries for Jubilee ticket was Kevin Okwara. When the matter was brought to the headquarters, and kudos to the leadership that took that decision, they firmly said the people of Turbo had spoken. Turbo is a cosmopolitan constituency, and they stood by the outcome. And I think that is where we need to go. Okay. And that is the expression of the extent to which Kenyans have matured over political leadership.
All right,
I'm a bit concerned with the leaders who still want to throw tantrums merely because they have lost. I think that the essence of election, and I think for people who have served for 10, 15, 20 years, the essence of election is that you are either going to win or to lose. And therefore, these people who are behaving as if life will come to an end, needs to be told firmly that that is the verdict of the people. All right, Bernard, to hear from you on the just concluded nominations.
Yeah, the just concluded nominations were, to my view, somehow democratic, but they were characterized by a number of issues that need to be pointed out, like violence, which was seen all over the country. And this is something that we should really condemn as a country, because as we approach the general election and the view that many people are still involved in violent activities, then it paints a very grim picture on what we expect in the upcoming elections. But fair, again, we saw a number of things like most parties were not prepared, the way Mr. Churchill has just pointed out. There were massive turnout, and we congratulate the Kenyans for coming out in large numbers to participate in this nomination process. What we'd just like to urge those who did not make it is that if you share the aspiration of a political party, if you share the ideologies of a political party, why decide to move out just because things do not work on your way? And we have seen a number of people now coming up and saying they want to go independent. Now, I came in when Bwana Kajwang was talking about this issue of independent candidates. As a country, we have not really matured enough to appreciate the level of independency, and I think this time round, as a country, we are going to witness the largest number of candidates vying as independent candidates. But in my own observation, I think they won't have so many of them winning, because we have these political parties that are going to marshal, or they are going to mobilize their supporters by this clamor where they say 6 Ps, So it's like the president saying, give me soldiers to fight with, because I'm going to fight with my enemies.
and the opposition also saying the same. So the independent candidates will be left in the middle without really knowing whom to, where to balance.
All right, let me come to you, Honorable TJ Kajwang. And you talked about conflict resolution within the party. And we have the ODM National Elections Board making their voice heard in Siaya, Homa Bay, Kisumu, where there were issues. Two things. One, do you trust the decision they made? And secondly, what's the system of knowing that the people who they actually pronounced as the winners were indeed the winners without necessarily going through the recount of the votes?
Well, first of all, I have to trust their decision because they are men and women who are equipped with a lot of knowledge and skill to do that which they do. You see, in ODM, there is the board in charge of elections, but there is also an appellate tribunal, which is independent from the board. And so when things go haywire in the tribunal, you go to the appellate tribunal, which then looks at the circumstances of the case and decides whether to remit it to the board or whichever decisions they make. Now, the fact that these are independent bodies are checks within itself in the internal structure of the party. You see, what Kenyans must discuss is whether nomination is an election. It's an important thing. Whether nomination is an election. Because when you look at the law and the spirit of the Constitution, nomination is a process by which political parties or independents or otherwise position themselves towards the election to allow the populace to express themselves in a free franchise. And so the elections is the general elections or a by-election. But you see, they must be, even in those nominations, there must be criteria. There must be democracy. There must be the rule of law. This is all. So it is that balance which is most important. Now, a lot of people, I want to thank my brother for raising this thing about those people who were in political parties and are now decamping
and becoming independent candidates.
Now, let me tell you, and you will tell me that it has happened. All these independent people will not make it large by large, I can tell you. Why? Because political system in this country, wananchi seems to be enjoying their rights through political parties. If you choose to be independent, it is not you, the contestant, who is independent. It is the people that you represent. You represent a constituency who have identified themselves to be independent in thought. Whether, if there are issues on environment, if there are issues of social relations and so on, they have decided that they are going to pursue independent approach devoid from political parties. And so you are there claiming to be independent, but leading nobody, because nobody seems to be subscribing to your political thought. Now, that will play in terms of how now people enjoy their political rights. That's why you see a lot of people are trying to be independent just because they want to be in the ballot.
But the reason why they are going independent, majority of them, is because they feel aggrieved by the party and they feel that the party did not represent them, or these parties that they feel are owned by individuals, and once they handpick those people, then they feel disenfranchised. And as a result, they are confident that the people will vote for them.
Well, I really respect people's opinions and entitlements at law to be able to do what they must do, except, of course, let's see how the results will come. I think the Kenyans will give a verdict on whether...
On the 8th.
On the 8th, whether you should have been aggrieved in the first place or not. Because you see, it is not that pure system in which you lose your election, you go to court, you go to the Court of Appeal, and you are forever ventilating your grief. It is an exercise which, in the totality of it all, one then says that so-and-so is able to fly the flag of that party in that particular place. But a lot of people, because 2 people or 3 people did not vote for you or did not get an opportunity, then you think you are aggrieved. Okay. I think that is where the conversation...
All right, Super Churchill, is there a danger of having, because this year we're likely to see an upsurge of independent candidates, and our assumption, or rather, parties are meant to be institutions that bring people together who are of like mind, but towards a certain goal. Now, with independent candidates, they are somehow, just dangling somewhere. Is that a danger for our political and our democratic space?
It is not. In every society, there will be people with divergent opinion. And I think our democracy recognizes, including the crafters of the Constitution, that realize that throughout the world, there have been, candidates that run as independents, even in the big democracies like the United States of America. Secondly, is to point out that there are people who, even long before nominations, made it clear that they were going to run as independents. I think there is an MP in the larger Meru County who made it clear that he was not going to be keen to run on any of the political affiliations. We have Patrick Musumba in one of the constituencies in Makueni, who is going for the third time. Remember, he came in through a by-election, won in 2013. This time around, there was not even a candidate declaring interest, even from the Wiper Party, that is the dominant party in the region. So there will only be these individuals. In Cherangani, we have had, our own athlete who has served as an independent candidate. The reason the numbers seem to grow is partly because of the unsatisfactory manner, quote unquote, in which parties conducted primaries. And some of those people might go through, because if indeed they were the most popular, with the touch on the ground among the population and the voting population, then there are chances that they may give stiff competition to those who won the ticket. So I would not be quick at dismissing them, because the reality is that we are likely to have quite a number of members of the National Assembly, some members of the Senate. We might even have a few governors, pulling through as independent candidates, based on whether indeed the nominations were fair and whether they'll be able to maintain the tempo. Because as Kajwang says, parties have this habit of coming with the entire machinery and swamping the whole place with their slogans and colors. And the Kajwang, as he seems to smile, knows how best they do this. So that is a challenge. So independent candidates will be going against the tide, but it will all be based on their capacity to sustain their touch with the people and be able to pull through up to the last minute.
All right, Honorable Kangata, your thoughts on independent candidates and the fact that most of them are probably being driven by the fact that they feel aggrieved by the parties.
The fact is, I foresee a situation where very few candidates will make it as independent. There will be very few. However, they will be used erroneously to prove that indeed the party system is not working. But to me, that will be a fallacious argument where you pick a few and then you try to postulate it as if it's a general rule. The point will be there will be just too few. I would foresee, let's say, a maximum of about 10 members coming in as an independent party. But that mechanism is usually good because it checks on the party, because the party ensures it does its things well, otherwise people can bolt out to the independent system. And I think it needs to be strengthened so that, for instance, now I have just seen an advert today where IBC appears to be suggesting if you want to run as an independent person, you need to do an application to the IBC by 4th of May this year. Meaning by that time, all factors remaining constant, there will be some parties which will still be which will be still be handling the appellate processes. So ideally, I think that system needs to be strengthened so that we ensure the parties don't do something which is unfair. And one of the parties that, to me, from where I sit, which appears to be quite unfair to its aspirants, is, sorry to say, is ODM. And I'm going to give you
Why do you say that?
Right now.
No, compare ODM with Jubilee. Jubilee
And of course, I'm sure the two will never, sit down and say, okay, we are. Why? What's wrong with ODM?
No, probably those two parties need to sit down and share some things. Yeah, I agree by that. Because look here, for instance, there is this guy called a certain doctor and a member of parliament from Kisii. He was vying as a governor under ODM in Nyamira County. And the incumbent Nyamira governor insisted a certain small set of numbers of voters to vote during nominations. But for that doctor, he was of the view that they need to expand that number. Of course, the governor appeared to have a good case legally. He was arguing that they want the so-called ODM membership list, which, by the way, is what is provided for in the law. It is members who nominate aspirants. But on the other hand, there's always an issue.
But as you talked of that of ODM, didn't Jubilee have the same problem where in some places they were using the list, others they were not?
In almost all cases.
Yeah, in actually almost all cases.
No,
yes, I mean, we were on the ground, Irungu Kangata, and there's places where there was no Jubilee list, so they had to use the IEBC list.
No, you see what happened? It was like
my point here being that you're casting aspersions or to ODM, but Jubilee has the same problem.
No, we didn't have such kind of a problem. The so-called IBC list, from a practical point of view, was almost like a replica of the so-called...
Almost, but it is not.
It was. You'll find the registered voters is about, let's say, 100,000. The so-called ODM members in that country.
You had no list.
In Dagoretti North, we were in this very studio when your own reporter on the ground was saying that in Dagoretti North, Jubilee had only 400 members on the list. Now, how many turned out to participate in the nomination in the Dagoretti North? They ended up using the IBC register, and it was being replicated everywhere. I think we must not, in Kiswahili they say, nyani ayoni kundule, and I think this is what is happening between our two friends. Both parties need to prepare sufficiently. There is no party that was better than the other in terms of the nomination. If Jubilee got it right, it was only on the second attempt. And I think they learned a lot from ODM. They learned a lot from their own failures on the first day. When there's a total flop in almost 21.
Let
me hear from Honorable TJ.
Kangata, you should never forget that you are doing it for the first time. Jubilee is just a party which is a baby from the other day. We have done this thing over and over. Of course, with a lot of difficulty, and we hope that we can make it much better. But you have lots and lots to learn from people who have been there for some time. I'm telling you, in fact, perhaps Jubilee would have been better voting online, because some of those lists which they had, even members were surprised that there were members of those parties. But you know what I think we should think of. I do not know, even sometimes I was talking to one of my colleagues, and they were saying that perhaps we should sit and think through a legislation in which everybody goes to the ballot. Let everybody go to the ballot. And after that, you can then decide, or you can, show IBC which party you will be affiliated to after the election. Because this headache of a party primary, which we will never get right, we don't have resources for it, we can't have structural and logistical support for it, it will never work, and it is hurting Kenyans. Maybe let everybody go to the ballot.
But now, Honorable TJ, let me first of all just maybe posing a question there, and you say that it may not or will not work. And is that as a result of being not prepared? Is it as a result of the fact that there are no systems in place? Is it financial?
It is just simple that the government of the day decides to starve all other political parties so that they are seen to be reckless and chaotic.
No, but ODM party, really, in all honesty, can conduct their own nominations away from the government.
No, if
how does the government come in?
There are three important things in a nomination. First of all, security. Secondly, logistical support, which I accept that there is enough funds. We generate enough...
Within the party?
Yes, we generate enough funds within the party, within the political party's fund, and so on, that should actually support logistics. But there is a whole question of putting up these things together, particularly security. If government of the day, and I hope that when Raila Odinga becomes the president, as he will not starve Jubilee.
Sorry, let me pause you, Honorable TJ Kajwang, because we need to release KTN home, and Life and Style begins now. But KTN News, we continue with the political point right here in the studio. So for those of us on KTN home, we say goodbye for Life and Style. That carry on. You're talking about the three things. One was security.
Yes.
Logistical.
There, of course, I must say that there are things which political parties need to do right. If you are in elections board, there is no reason why ballot papers should find their way in the hands of people. There is no way in which ballots should not end up in the places where they should at the right time. There are some of these things which are just a problem of management in our boards. But again, also, you kill these boards, but they may not be answerable to so many of these problems. If, for example, you go there as you are talking about Dr. Gezami and Nyangarama, you go out there and political players make it impossible. It is the political players that make it impossible for it to work. And then another thing is, when members do their things out there in the field, then they come and blame Raila Odinga, or they blame Uhuru Kenyatta, as if Raila Odinga was there helping in those things. Most of these guys are really out of the picture. So my guess is that this will go for a while, really. Kenyans will expect that as we mature, as we see these things every day, we will lower our expectations and we will balance out. And so going forward, political parties are going to be stronger, in my view, and Kenyans are going to get their democratic spaces. And if they wish to massacre us the way they massacred us this time, this was a complete slaughter. It was a slaughter across the board. People have gone home.
Completely.
Yeah, so
and the Kenyan voter is definitely, like I read somewhere, hawataki ujinga. But yeah, let's move on to something else now, which is equally important. It's the IEBC. And maybe to hear from you, Suba Churchill, whether you feel IEBC is ready. We have, I think, 97 days to go before the elections. Do you think IEBC is ready?
Yes and no. Yes, because IEBC has no option but to be ready. But I get concerned when I read in the print media, I hear it from the electronic media, that there are feuds with respect to
between the Secretariat and
posting of staff. I have this feeling that the Chebukati-led commission may have not taken charge. When you are a new boss, you must demonstrate that it is under new management. And I thought the first thing that Chebukati was going to do is to ruffle feathers. That's the only way you demonstrate that you have taken charge.
You're in charge.
Now, interestingly, it is Chebukati who is supporting status quo. I'm wondering whether he really is keen on taking charge. I also want to believe that Chebukati must also take charge by ensuring that the audit of the voters' roll happens in a way that will inspire confidence in the key political actors and the general public. I speak from a position of knowledge that the latest opinion poll that Infotrack and Harris conducted gave the IBC an approval rating of 76%, which is a very good rating by the public. And instead of undermining that public trust and confidence that the people expressed through that opinion poll, I'm worried that the IBC is busy undermining it by appearing to differ, because that is how the Isaac-led commission went under. We started here getting glimpses of, cat fights over tenders, and that is how, the trust got eroded time with the time. There is also a way in which the parliament, mainly the National Assembly, put the IBC in a fix by, making amendments to the electoral laws last minute. And I think you remember one of the recommendations of the Kriegler Commission was that you do not change election laws the last minute, because it ends up throwing the election management body off guard. So there is a sense in which the National Assembly in particular and Parliament as a whole is to blame for the quagmire in which the IBC finds itself. Of course, Kenyans have become very litigious. We have seen more recently an applicant going to court in Kilifi and getting, the period for party primaries extended, which was his right, because we saw all the chaos that were happening, and parties definitely have had the benefit to put their house in order. I'm not sure whether Jubilee would have had the time it needed to sort out the over 500, petitions it was handling, and and to wipe the tears of weeping aspirants in front of the party headquarters, as I witnessed on the television. Okay. So I think overall, IBC really has to work overtime. We admit that it has been thrown off guard by the late-minute, legislations that affected the electoral calendar, but it really also has to demonstrate that it is
In charge.
it is in charge.
All right, Bernard, your
Chebukati
thoughts?
must demonstrate that he's
Yeah,
taken
to
charge.
me, I think IBC is well prepared to conduct the upcoming elections. But I want to point out a few things. One, there's the lack of involvement of political parties in their preparedness, because political parties are political players, and IBC is like a referee. So I think it's high time that political parties should be actually involved in the processes, in the program, so that they know what's happening.
How are they not involved?
As in, we get declarations, like the other day, we saw Chebukati coming on media and telling us about how well they are prepared and showing us some gadgets which they said they are ready to conduct this electoral process. But when they are unveiling these gadgets, I think it's high time that maybe they could have invited representatives of political parties to ensure, to ascertain that, okay, these are the kind of gadgets that we expect. Because when you look at the previous elections, there's been a lot of tension and suspicion from the political parties on the acts of the IBC. And if political parties or those involved in the political activities see that IBC is doing something to insinuate or something that looks suspicious, then temperatures start rising.
Okay.
So I think IBC should be above board in their activities and be open enough. Invite political parties around table, and this should be done frequently.
Okay.
Update them on what's going on.
Let me
very
tell you,
quickly.
IEBC is not prepared on two key issues which will determine this election. One, the register. There must be an audit of this register. We have to agree that we are working on a platform that Kenyans are agreed that these are the people who will express their franchise at the ballot. That is a big, big problem, because there are still in those registers people who needed to have been cleaned. There are still allegations that there are people who are in that register through M-Pesas and through Safaricom's in that register. There are even people who are soldiers and people who are not supposed to be voting, 2 million of them who are in that register. We need to clean it, number one. Number two, what my friend is saying. You know, in subsection 5 of the amendment, we said that all ITs, equipment, ICT equipments of technology. These things must be done with the participation of political parties. That has never been done. We do not know what they are acquiring. We do not know when we go there to the ballot, all those things will fail, or when you put your finger, your thumb like this way, you will be giving 10 votes to Jubilee. We don't know what is happening, and we really should need to know. Otherwise,
But IEBC has been put there as a referee, and you ought to trust them, because you cannot verify everything they're doing. Let me just hear from Irungu Kangata as we're finishing, as we wind up because of time.
Yes, I concede that indeed that there are things that ought to be done before we go to the actual elections. The only problem I would say is that the problems which are bedeviling that institutions, they are not internal. They have been forced onto it by external players, including courts, including various litigants who have been going to court. Let's say, for instance, the issue regarding cleaning the register. I suppose it is his party that went to court to challenge the award of that tender. So meaning...
But it's their legal right.
Well, it is, but surely if you really want to have a credible elections, you trust that entity that has been awarded that contract, you allow it to proceed, probably you petition to be included in that process, instead of trying to stall. In any event, take into account there are clear legal timelines which were established via a law, and the IBC is racing against time. So let us also be fair to IBC. And I think today I've seen a headline in the Star alluding to that. Court should allow IBC some breathing space. Otherwise, those interferences are going to make IBC be unable to hold a credible and fair.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to wind it up right there because of time. Thank you so very much. That's Honorable Irungu Kangata, Member of Parliament for Kiharu, but also Senator nominee for on a Jubilee ticket. We also have Honorable TJ Kajwang, who's Member of Parliament for Waraka, but also defending his seat on an ODM ticket. We have Suba Churchill, and we also have Bernard Wakoli, who are political analysts. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And that's the political point this morning. Thank you so very much for staying with us. We will take a short break. When we come back, we'll be looking at some of the stories that are making headlines.